Beyond words or linguistics or language, if you could curate a museum to any niche subject matter, what would it be?
I think I would love to curate a museum about trees.
Ooh.
Trees. Tell
I
us
love
more.
trees.
What would a museum on trees look like?
Well, I don't know, because now that I'm a fan of participatory museums,
Sure.
I'd have to think about how could I bring the subject to life without a lot of reading and labels. But I've never done that, so I don't know how that would work. I've always said if I could change my name, it would be to Greenwood. I don't know.
The Greenwood Museum would be an exciting museum to visit, I think.
Next life.
Welcome to Butter No Parsnips. Every week on Butter No Parsnips, your hosts Emily Moyers and Kyle Imperator take you on an adventure through the weird, wacky, wonderful, and sometimes even wicked world of one wayside word. Strange characters, delightful bits, and general joyousness abound. Join them as they test each other's etymological expertise.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Butter No Parsnips. I'm Emily Moyers.
And I'm Kyle Imperator.
Kyle, are you ready to walk silently with your hands clasped behind your back?
I mean, you know I always am, but I'm not sure if this is like...
Are you ready, Kyle, to solemnly nod at stuff, signaling to all of those around you that, yeah, I get it?
Okay, is this a personal attack?
Kyle, are you ready for your word?
Yes, I'm ready for a word. Please tell me.
Then forget everything I just said, because your word today is planet word.
Planet word? Hey, I know this one! I know this one because I've been in this one. We both have.
We have indeed.
And if I'm not mistaken, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, Planet Word is the museum in Washington, D.C. dedicated to the language arts?
Well, you know who I've got to correct you if you're wrong?
I think I do.
Kyle, we've got here the founder of the museum herself, Anne Friedman. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And you are correct. It is a museum of language arts. That the formal title actually is the Museum of Language Arts, Inc.
And it's so great to have you on the show. Emily and I and Seth, our producer, have been to Planet Word, and we absolutely adored it. But could you tell the audience a little more about yourself?
So I guess that I would define myself as a teacher. I became a teacher late in life, in my 40s, actually. But I sort of figured out what I wanted to do, finally, by the time I was 40. And I think being a teacher has really influenced how I went about creating the museum and what happens here, because I liked to teach with activity and games and participation and art projects. And so I brought all that kind of participatory belief into creating Planet Word. And also, I lived overseas in Beirut and Jerusalem for about a decade. And I lived in two cities that were torn by civil strife. And so I sort of promised myself that when we moved back to the United States, I would do something to create community. So that's another important influence on what Planet Word is like. We're trying to create a community of word lovers, of people who participate together in a lot of the galleries. So it's not an individual experience. It's
Sure.
very social.
Yeah.
And you're using your words also with other people. Your voice determines the visit that you have to Planet Word.
So, I think you've started to answer this question already, but could you tell our audience, what is Planet Word? So
Planet Word is a museum of words and language. It's located in a National Historic Landmark school at 13th and K in downtown Washington, D.C. This school is a National Historic Landmark twice over, once because of its architecture, which was very unusual and innovative for a school building public school building in 1869. And also because in 1880, Alexander Graham Bell successfully sent a message using light waves from the building to his colleague. So it is also designated and has a plaque on the exterior of the building for being the birthplace of wireless.
Wow.
So here in one building, we're bringing together language, education, learning, and a milestone in the history of telecommunications.
Yeah.
And so it's a perfect match for what happens at Planet Word, which is a museum of words and language where you hopefully learn a lot, but we use technology to intrigue you, to spark your curiosity. So it's sort of a melding of those two ideas. And we have galleries about everything that you can do with words. And they're not passive galleries. They're participatory galleries where you're active. So a gallery on songwriting, on oratory, on poetry, on advertising copywriting. Anything you can think of that you do with words and language, you can learn about and have, an experience with at Planet Word. So I say that I hope when someone leaves Planet Word, and you can tell me if this happened to be true in your case, that you will have read a little bit, written a little bit, spoken, and listened. All the 4 elements of the language arts.
Yeah, we absolutely did. It is such a wonderful social participatory experience from start to finish. And truly from the beginning, outside the building is the speaking willow tree, which gets back to your fondness for trees and just the experience of, walking up to the building and passing under the tree and hearing all of the voices in different languages speaking to you in, a sort of stereo audio.
Yes.
It's such a wonderful introduction to the sounds that you're going to be hearing. You enjoyed it, right, Emily?
I did. I enjoyed it a lot. There were a lot of exhibits in there that were super, super cool. One that we hit pretty early on that felt very perfect for us was the Where Do Words Come From exhibit, which is the huge word wall. And that deals all with etymology, which is our stock and trade. So there was there was some information that we already knew that we got to engage with, and we're learning some new stuff. And it was a super cool exhibit that we were moving through.
It's won a lot of awards for its design. It's quite unique.
Super
just
fun.
For your listeners to know, it's a 40-foot wide, 22.5-foot tall, 3-dimensional wall of words. There are about 1,000 words in total, stacked up on top of each other. And it's sort of a sound and light show about etymology, but the visitors respond to questions from the narrator with their voices. And we use voice recognition technology to advance the narrative.
Yeah.
And before the exhibit was created, we had to do all the research on what ways are words added to the English language. And we came up with about 28 different ways. And they're not all included in the Where Do Words Come From gallery experience. So what our exhibit designers did was cull that list of 28 and, come up with the most important ways, the most sort of fun and gamifiable ways.
Yeah.
Starting out, that was really scary to me. Oh, what if, somebody criticizes us because we didn't talk about a certain subject? But I realized that you have to make some compromises because visitors don't have stamina for an exhibit that goes on and on and on, But if they go away with just the key ideas and principles, if they're really interested, then they might go and learn more on their own, or go to graduate school or read a book.
the social aspect of it too, because you're talking to, it's almost like having a TED talk, but there's no one there. It's like there's this mysterious voice teaching you. And so everybody, like, you're at first just in wonderment that this voice is responding to you, and everybody's looking at each other like, oh, wow, we're having a conversation with this person. And then you're learning together with the wall. And it's really, it's such a cool experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Super engaging.
Something that sets Planet Word apart from other museums local to DC is the fact that it celebrates a concept. You can walk into the Natural History Museum and see fragments of skulls of early man, but you can't really put the first apostrophe on display, per se. So let's talk about the idea of starting a museum dedicated to the language arts. Where did this idea come from, and why was it important to you?
I was a teacher, and then I became a teacher of beginning reading and writing. I just reveled in, how 6-year-olds would be so excited to discover poetry or to write persuasive letters to their parents saying why they should get to have pizza on Friday nights or whatever. So then I retired because I started late. So I retired not too long afterwards, about 12 years of teaching. But I wasn't done with literacy. I loved sort of transmitting my enjoyment of wordplay and of reading to others. And so I was looking for something important to do. And then I read in 2012 an article in the New York Times about a new museum in New York City, MoMath, that was bringing an abstract concept, math, to life using technology, hands-on exhibits and experiences. So when I read that, I thought, oh, that's it. We need a museum that would do the same thing for the language arts. I actually went up to New York, visited MoMath, became friends with the co-founders, found out what they would have done differently if they were starting over. So that was really influential in how this came to be. And then I started listing, well, if you're going to have a museum about words and language, worth its name and worth the, rising to the level of the importance of that subject, what would be in it? And I came up with about 200 ideas.
Wow. Sure.
And everybody that I talked to loved the idea. I hired museum consultants who did a feasibility study. I did focus groups with kids, 10 to 12-year-olds, boys and girls, and their parents. And everyone reacted positively. So it was sort of like, okay, I can't stop. I'm on this train. I have to keep going. And so, I knew nothing about operating a museum, or especially this kind of new participatory museum. I was more familiar with art museums and history museums, but learned through reading and study, and that was old-fashioned. And I'd been to the Exploratorium in San Francisco, so I knew that scientific concepts could be brought to life without a collection of artifacts. I decided that that's what I have to do, because if I want to engage people with reading and language, I have to find a new way to do that, because people and kids weren't reading that much anymore. Mm-hmm. They had so many other ways to entertain themselves. So there had to be some way to catch their attention and to create a sort of a buzz around words and language. And I felt that that was technology, but it would always be in the service of content. There's no technology that's unnecessary. It's all there because it feeds our mission and, has an appropriate role to engage people with words and language. But hopefully they'll remember the content that they were exposed to and not the technology itself.
I think so. I think the technology is sort of like what the ideal medium should be, which is invisible.
Yes.
It's
Mhm.
you're focusing on what you're getting through the technology, not the technology itself. It sounds like collaboration was a big part of this. I mean, you talked about interacting with different museum professionals, but did you also consult linguistics and other like language experts during the museum's development? And did they, did their input influence the exhibits?
We sure did. So we do have an advisory board of over 60 experts in all different fields of language and word usage. So we have songwriters, we have poets, we have a couple writers, we have many academics on our advisory board, and there is not a single gallery in the museum that wasn't a collaboration between the exhibit designers, content experts, my team, and one or more expert advisors who vetted the information. And so it really did have an impact. Our first gallery is called First Words, and it's about early childhood language acquisition. And we selected the milestones of, how kids acquire language. And that was all done with one of our advisors who was up to date, knew what the cutting edge research was, and could make sure that we picked the milestones that were, important. And because we can't show everything. We couldn't be comprehensive. We had to, choose very carefully what we presented.
The thing that is so surprising about Planet Word is just how immersive it is. I think one could easily assume that a museum about language, and as you were saying, that you were worried that it didn't want to be just about a lot of reading. But really, truly, from the beginning to the end, the museum shows you in a dozen different ways the hundreds of interactions that we have with language every day. What was that process like of taking language and bringing it to life?
Well, we had to fit the topic into the space that we had. Mm-hmm. And so that was done with our exhibit designers, local projects from New York, who clustered the topics into sort of galleries and that made sense. And then they proposed that visitors would start their visit on the top floor and work their way down, which was something I'd never imagined, but it's really a really good idea, because then by the time you get back down to the ground floor, you've learned all of this or been exposed to ideas about using your words carefully and how words matter before you go back out on the street and have a chance to interact with people. So the top floor is about words and language in general. The biggest space is on the third floor. It was the original assembly room of the public school. It's called the Great Hall. And so we put the biggest topic in there. There are about at least 7,000 still existing languages spoken in the world. We selected 30 languages, including 2 sign languages, to teach about and have experiences with in the Great Hall. But so, that was a logical match. Big space, big topic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the second floor, it's all about what you can do with words. Okay, you learned about where words come from in English and endangered languages on the top floor. But then when you get to the second floor, you have experiences with what can you do with these words? Creativity with words. And then on our ground floor, it's the power of language that sort of connects all of, well, they're just 2 galleries, but there are a lot of experiences on the ground floor, and they're all connected with the idea of power.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wonderful that, you're not just displaying kind of these isolated topics. You're building a narrative. You're building a lesson plan almost,
That's right.
Without people recognizing it.
Yes, not to be didactic or hit you over the head, but by the time you leave Planet Word, you should take away from that our language is always changing. and that you can use your words to build community or to divide. It's your choice. If you leave remembering those simple ideas, we've done our job.
So, in getting people to take away those concepts, how do you balance educational content with entertainment to engage a wide audience from children to linguists?
We have 6 core values that we used to measure every experience. Like, will it be in the museum or not? If it's going to be in the museum, it has to have some element of being fun, playful, always meaningful. We don't have any room for something silly. Motivational, unexpected, and inclusive. So a lot of the engagement comes from things are unexpected. We have a secret room. You never know what's going to happen when you talk into a gold frame. All of a sudden a diorama is going to light up, and you didn't see that coming. But also, even with exhibits about the most serious subjects, like we call it words that wound, but sort of hate speech, it's funny and it's serious. And so throughout the museum, I think you'll have a smile on your face. You'll be surprised, but it might be a really sophisticated idea.
Another way that you tackle those kinds of things are, I believe you call them beacons.
Yes.
They cover subjects ranging from taboo language to dyslexia to language endangerment to propaganda. What did you find was the importance of making sure to cover those kinds of ideas, and what work went into curating those and covering those carefully?
The beacon topics allow us to, be on the cutting edge of what's happening with words and language. And so the scripts were written by either us in-house with the help of experts, or we contracted out to somebody whose field is animal communications, or it's not always linguists, and then worked with them to edit their script to fit how our beacons work, which is that they're interactive and people are standing in front of them, so they have to be engaging. You have to interact, otherwise people don't have the stamina to stand there and learn about a topic for too long. We've got a list of topics that we still want to do, and we can add beacon topics infinitely. So that allows us to stay up to date. And, I'd like to have a beacon about language and diplomacy. We're working right now on questions, a beacon about questions. Where do questions come up? Why are they important? Well, they're in surveys and polls and the SATs. How you structure a question and the words you choose determine the response you'll get. And so we have a long list of beacon topics that we would like to add, and they're a lot more affordable than creating a new gallery experience.
Yeah. And starting from scratch.
Yeah.
What do you think technology adds to this experience of exploring language? How do you find ways to include those types of technological experiences?
We had great help from our exhibit designers, first of all, that they're known for their use of technology in museum design. That's why we went to them in the first place, because we knew we needed to use technology to get people invested and interested in reading and language arts. But, in our magic library, we have 79 books, soon to be 100, that come to life. You take a book off the shelf, put it in a special holder, and that triggers a sort of a projection. It's all 79 are bespoke little movie trailers about that particular book. And the script was written with the intention of making you want to read that book. And so we have books for everybody. We have, everything from picture books to cookbooks to graphic novels. So we always are trying with the content to have something for everybody. And then the technology brings that to life and just adds another layer of interest. And I think in my next life, if I'm not going to be a curator of a tree museum, I'm going to be a sound designer. Because that was something I did not know about or expect. Adding sound to these scripts that we've done adds so much interest. That was just something that I didn't expect in the process of building this museum, to find, how important sound can be in holding visitors' attention.
Yeah, it can make it feel really dynamic and engaging. I'm so glad that you brought up the library specifically, because Kyle and I are both librarians, so that was obviously a standout exhibit for us. How did that collection come to be? How do you go about selecting books to display in this really unique and beautiful way?
We needed to have books that appeal to anybody who walked through our doors, and we try to make sure that we have books that speak to different groups with different backgrounds. And so now that we're going to add 21 more books, we look through what's already there. What are we missing? Who do we not have a book for? And we also know that the picture books get the most use. We have a lot of grandparents who come with grandchildren, and they go and make a beeline towards corduroy, or, some books that everybody remembers from childhood. And so we will add some more of those. We've got a book on almost every sport, so we're not missing that. And we have also 5 books in Spanish. And that was more of a challenge to select from the whole universe of books in Spanish, which books would appear on our shelves. Yeah. And, I'm not fluent enough in Spanish to read these books. So how do I know, that the narrative script that we come up with is appropriate or, accurate? So we hired a contractor, to help us with that. Like, one book is set in Argentina. So we chose a voice actor who had an Argentinian accent in Spanish. I don't know. I can't tell. But we had experts, who could help guide us on that.
Did you choose any books just because you're fond of them for the library?
Yes, I did. So like I said about corduroy, it's there because I used that as a first grade teacher.
Sure.
And I had things to say about the book. We're not retelling the story or reading the words of the book, but trying to find a bigger point, even for little kids, of what this book is about and why you would love to read it. So, with corduroy, it's about friendship, and that we all need to find a friend. And so that was something that I wanted to make sure was in the museum. And then we sell all the books that come to life in our gift shop.
Yes.
I think that's a really smart idea as well. And I love the dioramas in the library as well. It's just another function to bring it to life. It's just the library, the way, the whole entire way it's designed is just like, when I was a kid, it's what I fantasized library should look like,
I agree.
On the subject of the library, does the museum also have an archive?
No, I wouldn't say that we have an archive. We do archive a couple things, though. I don't know if you went in our recording booth in the Words Matter gallery. It's towards the end of their visit. We have this recording booth. It's sort of like the Moth or something. But we encourage people to tell a true story about how words have been important in their lives. They have 3 minutes. And so we have an archive of all the stories that people have told. We've been open for 4 years. So we have thousands of stories, and they're amazing. They're wonderful. You know, they're not silly, and people are really serious and about how, you know, what words have meant to them, and in all different ways. So we have that archive. I don't know. We've used 1 hour worth of those stories at an event at Planet Word, but I want to find more and important ways to use that catalog. And also in that gallery, you might have noticed we have colored paper circles.
Yes.
There are 8 prompts for one word that means, or one word I like that reminds me of home, or one word that, you know, someone who loves me uses to describe me. You know, so people write their answers. It's an analog activity on these paper circles. Then they can hang them up on the walls of the recording booth, and other people can read all the visitors' suggestions of the words they like and why. And then we go through them at the end of the day. If there's something really compelling, an example, we will keep that. But we've gone through tens of thousands of these paper circles.
Yeah.
But people love it. They love having the chance to respond and to write in their own words about one word that's important to them. And so we have stacks and stacks of those paper circles.
On that note, what were some of the more unexpected challenges in curating exhibits for something as intangible as language?
We've had some mistakes about languages, and even vetted by professors, or mistakes that a native speaker of a language has repeated, you know, in their script. And then other visitors come through and they say, well, actually, you know, that's not quite right. And so we have to correct our exhibits. And because museums are among the most trusted institutions left in the United States. So we have to be correct. We have to live up to people's expectations that what they see and learn about at a museum is correct. So that's expensive to change in many cases. You know, we have to sometimes send a voice actor back into the recording studio to update something.
Were there any like whole exhibits that didn't make the cut or had to be axed?
Yes. I had always assumed we'd have an exhibit on language and technology, and that didn't make it into the museum. But remember, we opened in 2020.
Sure.
There's no Chat GPT
Yeah.
Oh,
in 2020.
Yeah.
So much has happened with large language models, at least as far as the general public knows, in these last few years, just basically 2 years.
Yeah.
So we are hoping to add a gallery on large language models,
Yeah.
but we really don't have space. So we'll have to transform a classroom or something if we really, you know, are going to do this. So there's that. But also, I'm sorry that we don't have any yard. We don't have any lawn, because I had ideas for word-related activities that you would do outside, like, you know, crawling under and over and around, and, you know, sort of a prepositional playground.
I love
And
that.
an irregular verb seesaw that would talk to you, and it would go seesaw, think, thought, drink, drank, just for fun. But that kind of actual physical wordplay
Yeah.
is.
I love that.
Wouldn't that be fun?
You know, it'd be so much fun.
So, unfortunately, we don't have any soft space where we could have a seesaw.
Sure.
Have you ever thought of opening another location where you could make those?
No,
Dreams come true.
No, she said with panic.
We've had a lot of people, a lot of interest from people all over the United States, even Europe. Like, can't we have a Planet Word? It belongs in Washington. We need a museum that honors words and language in a city that's a capital of a country with a written constitution where words are inscribed across our monuments and memorials. Planet Word needs to be in Washington. And I think the fact that it's in this beautiful old school building is also important. And people appreciate it. They love the juxtaposition of the technology with the old school. They say that to me. They recognize that this is really cool, that you can have something so modern in an old building.
Now, you guys also have events hosted at the museum, which cover a range of topics in language. You premiered friend of the podcast, Ellen Joven's Rebel with a Clause, which follows her nomadically grammatical journey across the country. You've hosted the comedic crossword show with epic rap battles, Zach Sherwin. You featured a talk with political pundit, Van Jones. And these all seem like great ways to celebrate both the miscellany and the gravity of language outside of these fixed exhibits at the museum. Yeah. Is that the intention of those events?
Absolutely. And, one of the decisions that we had to make early on with our exhibit designers was, what kind of museum were we going to have? Were we going to have one large permanent experience per gallery, or rotating and changing and traveling exhibits? And so we opted for the first choice, but that meant that we could stay fresh and relevant and changing by having programs do that in our auditorium. So we're trying to have a robust series of programs that would appeal to all different interests, just like we do with our museum content. Like, why was Van Jones here? We had a series of speakers in a series called Having Hard Conversations. And so if you remember, Van Jones worked with the first Trump administration on prison reform. And so he really crossed the aisle. He worked with Jared Kushner and got this legislation passed. And so we wanted to talk about that, what it means. We had Tim Shriver, who has created something called the Dignity Index, and how people can monitor their own words and score them. Do they bring dignity to the listener, or are they, contemptuous? So that was definitely a word-related subject. We also have a series called Eyes on Reading. And we have a journalist in residence, Emily Hanford, who is well known for her podcast called Sold a Story, which sort of upended the reading instruction community with her research and how so many kids were failing to learn to read in our schools. And so she curates that series and brings real experts from mostly America, but also from France to the museum. And we have a lot of educators who attend those lectures. But some people expected we're going to teach reading or we're going to teach at Planet Word. No, we're a museum. We do informal education. But I thought it was important to pass on best practices in reading education, reading instruction. So having that series allows us to sort of, feel good that we're not teaching reading, but we are helping disseminate the best ideas about how to teach reading nowadays.
We've talked about a lot of different really important things that Planet Word is providing to the public, but what do you ultimately feel is the importance of having a Planet Word? What do you hope it accomplishes, and what need do you feel it meets in the museum space?
we haven't accomplished everything that I would like. I want Planet Word ultimately to be sought out when questions about language arise. We are sort of the go-to experts or thoughtful voice about words and language, and I have written many blogs about current events and what's happening in the world of words and language arts and even reading education. By having all of these experts and speakers who are well known and well regarded, I think we're building up that reputation. And they say to us, we are so glad you are here, especially right now when we're seeing our language be kind of twisted and turned. So we feel like we're more relevant than ever, and we have a more important role than we imagined we would have when I started thinking about this, in 2013.
How else do you envision the museum evolving in the coming years, especially as language itself continues to change?
Like I said, I hope we will add a gallery about large language models, and we'll add some more topics to the beacons. Beyond that, right now, maybe new songs and, update the karaoke lounge with new songs.
That's a fun exhibit.
I don't have a lot of radical ideas for changing what we've done.
Sure. Well, we've got one last question for you, Anne, which is just what is something about the museum and what it does that you would like our audience to take away from this episode, whether it's an all-encompassing truth or just a simple takeaway? What would you like them to know?
Well, I hope that people do learn to pay attention to their words and understand how much words matter and how powerful they can be, and that it's your choice how you use your words. You can use them to bring people together, or you can use them to divide, and it's up to you. And I hope that if you came to Planet Word and you really listened and participated in our galleries, that there's kind of only one way, one right way to think upon leaving, and that's that you're going to pay attention to words and use them carefully.
I think that is a wonderful message, and I'm positive that we took that away from our experience at the museum.
Can I add one thing?
Please, yes.
So Planet Word is free.
Yeah, that's
we
an important thing.
Love donations, but Planet Word is a free museum. So I just want people to know there is no barrier to entry for anybody.
And you get so much. It's like not like, I think we talked about like how good it is for kids, but it is good if you're a grown-up person too. Like we had a blast.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Anne. I think to round out our conversation today, we've got a little game to play.
I might have a little game. The game I've got is called Gotta See 'em Museum.
Okay.
And this is a collection of collections of sort, and a nice little way to round out our conversation on museum curation. There are a lot of museums in the world. Some of the most famous are right around the corner from Planet Word in Washington, D.C. But today's game is dedicated to those less famous museums, the underdogs of the curatorial arts, if you will. I'm going to ask you 3 trivia questions about real, actual museums in the world, which celebrate some overlooked subject matter. And you two will work together to figure out what that museum celebrates.
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
with you there.
I told you I wasn't a museum person. I was a teacher.
That's all right. They're just some quick and fun little questions. All right. First one I got. Perhaps surprisingly located in Minnesota and not Hawaii, this museum celebrating a product features a measuring station where you can measure yourself in units of this product, an assembly station where you can a plush version of the product to race against the factory's production rate, and a life-size diorama of the company's namesake, George Hormel, announcing his retirement to his son Jay. What product does this museum celebrate?
The first thing that comes to my mind is pineapple, but
That's fair.
I think the Hormel gave it away for me.
Spam.
Is it Spam?
But why Hawaii? Well,
No, I mean, that's a fair question to ask.
So you guys are correct. It is indeed Spam. Spam plays a part in Hawaiian cuisine. Spam musubi, that like press thing with like rice and spam, is like a big thing in Hawaii. I didn't know that either. I had to Google it.
Oh, rats. I'll have to go back to Hawaii.
Oh, darn. Just another reason. Yes, it is Spam. While this factory is located in Austin, Minnesota, the annual Spamorama Festival is hosted in Austin, Texas, and features such events as a cook-off, where the best and worst tastes are awarded, as well as the Spam Olympics, featuring events ranging from a spam toss, a spam cram, and a spam carving display.
Oh my gosh.
Spam cram? What could that possibly be?
I don't want to think about it, quite frankly. All right, my next question. Located in Somerville, Massachusetts, the MOBA was officially founded in 1993 after Scott Wilson discovered the museum's signature piece between two trash cans in Boston on Garbage Day. In 1996, a piece in the museum was stolen, and a reward of $6.50 was offered for its return. Following this theft, the museum installed a fake camera with a sign below it that reads, "Warning, this gallery is protected by a fake security camera." What does MOBA stand for?
MOBA?
The Museum of.
Yeah, definitely Museum of. I'll take the second half. Thank you for...
I jumped in there to make sure I could help.
Yeah.
Museum of. If MoMA is the Museum of Mathematics or Modern Art, what would the Museum of...
Do we think it's just the Museum of Bad Art?
Kyle, you got it.
Is that it?
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Founded to, quote, celebrate the labor of artists whose work would be displayed and appreciated in no other forum. The Museum of Bad Art dedicates itself to, quote, the artist's right to fail gloriously. 10 years after the theft mentioned earlier, the thief contacted the museum demanding $5,000. With no ransom paid, the painting was still returned anyway.
So funny. He just couldn't bear to have it anymore.
That's how bad it is. I want to say, I looked at the signature piece that inspired the museum. It's not that bad. It's just a painting.
All right, another place I have to go.
There you go. That one's closer than Hawaii. It's just in Boston. All right, this last one is the hardest one. Based in Zagreb, Croatia, this unconventionally emotional museum features objects ranging from an axe to a hairdryer to someone's chopped off dreadlocks to an empty bag of fortune cookies attached to a Starbucks cup, each accompanied by a unique story from the donor or donors. The museum was awarded the European Museum of the Year award for its unique concept and ability to share intimate and personal, and perhaps interpersonal, histories as part of a broader cultural dialogue. What does this museum showcase?
Museum of Axe Murderers.
That's exactly what we were afraid you would think.
I mean, there is an interpersonal connection between axe murderer and axe murdery, you know? They're forever linked.
So it's not Transylvania. You said
no, it is Zagreb, Croatia. But certainly interpersonal is the clue.
The items, like a hairdryer.
The Museum of Ways People Have Killed Their Lovers.
So I know that axe was like a big red flag there. The items are very disparate. There's a big variety of items in the collection.
Is it like a conceptual museum? Is it like based on? Is it just?
And the fact that all these items were accompanied by stories, like narratives, is important.
I think you had maybe it half right. And is it not? Is it just the lovers part? Is it like relationships that they're talking about?
It is the Museum of Broken Relationships.
Broken relationships.
Oh,
yeah.
Somebody broke up because of a fortune cookie?
Apparently, you'd have to go read the story in the museum to find out. The axe was used to destroy furniture. It wasn't used to kill anybody, I promise.
Oh, good.
Founded by artists, and I'm going to say these names now, Olinka Vistica and Drazen Grubisic. I think that's it. Inspired by their own breakup, they founded Museum as an exhibition of personal items and stories from failed relationships, featuring about 3,500 objects from around the world.
It sounds like a museum version of the New York Times Tiny Love Stories.
It is, yeah.
I think based on the axe to the furniture, I think there's a lot that that Planet Word can teach people about language to help them manage their breakups.
Yes, in the Having Hard Conversations series.
Yeah.
Yes. We need to add that.
Try and avert before we get to the axe issue. Well, you guys were 3 for 3. Perfect game. And
nice
thank
job,
you.
Anne. Good
Thank
teamwork.
you. That's a big relief because I was worried about this game.
No, you guys got it. And thank you so much for coming on the show and talking all about all of this with us. Before we wrap up, how can people learn more about Planet Word?
Well, they can definitely go to our really beautiful website, planetwordmuseum.org. Our visitor guide, what to do in Washington. We have a lot of Google reviews and Yelp reviews that will tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, thank you again. And there's also you're active on social media as well, and there's some really great content that you post there.
If you go to our website, you'll have a chance to sign up for our newsletter. And then you'll really find out everything that we've got going on and what's coming up.
Well, worth it.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I just want to convey again how much Emily and I love the museum. Truly, it has really stuck with me. And being able to speak with you again about it and kind of walk through it mentally is just reminding me of how much I enjoyed and how much I got out of every moment of it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's really nice to hear.
Remember, listeners at home, that you can find Butter No Parsnips on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Butter No Parsnips Podcast, and on TikTok at Butter No Parsnips. And if you liked today's episode, consider giving us a 5-star rating or review wherever you heard us.
And if you really liked today's episode, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/butternoparsnips. Donating $5 or more earns you a shout out, either on social media or here on the podcast.
Thanks so much to all of you. You help us make what we make.
And with that, I've been Emily Moyers.
And I've been Kyle Imperator, and you've been?
Anne Friedman.
And this has been Butter No Parsnips.
Butter No Parsnips is produced by Kyle Imperator, Emily Moyers, and myself, Seth Glicksman. The main and accompanying themes were composed by Kyle Imperator.